Welcome to another segment of the BYU Management Society's Learn from Professionals initiative. Our goal is to provide guidance to young adults that are either exploring various careers or are ready to jumpstart a career. Today, we have an opportunity to learn from a seasoned professional in the public accounting industry, Mr. Michael Manwaring. Mike is a retired CPA with Price Waterhouse Coopers LLP. He was a tax partner with them with over 30 years of experience in public accounting. He has a broad array of experience working with a variety of clients. Notable clients that he worked with, he led the oil and gas tax practice in Price Waterhouse Coopers Southwest market and was the Denver Council of Petroleum Accountants Society's tax co-chair. He was part of the National Price Waterhouse Coopers Accounting for income tax leadership team and led PwC Southwest market. He worked with audit and non-audit clients of the Southwest market to resolve technical questions and concerns. He has significant experience in dealing with tax accounting items of small to large Fortune 500 multinational corporations. So Mike's also an LDS Institute instructor. He is a guest lecturer for accounting for income taxes. He's also a sought-after lecturer on accounting for income taxes, not only with Price Waterhouse internal and external classes, but also at multiple universities in Colorado and Utah, the COPAS organization, and Tax Executive Institute. He has significant real estate experience, having built from a few residential properties to multiple commercial properties, negotiating deals, purchase agreements, partnerships, build-to-suit, leases, construction, service contracts. He also has experience in financing and property managing, accounting, and cash flow projections for real estate. Mike has a Bachelor of Science in Accounting from Brigham Young University and a Master of Accountancy with tax emphasis from Brigham Young University. He's also a Boy Scout, a past Boy Scout Master, and Denver Area Audit Committee member. Mike also serves with the Young Professional Career Engagement Program as our program development team member. Now, I know that Mike and his wife, Kenna, are world travelers. They've visited over 62 countries. They've been busy. They have 4 children and 3 grandchildren. So, Mike, welcome. We want to thank you for your willingness to share your expert advice with our viewers.
Glad to be here.
So, Mike, can you tell us a little bit more about what made you decide to pursue a career in public accounting?
Yeah, it really started before my senior year in high school. I had some friends that said, hey, there's this class that we can take. It's an Easy A. You know, it's accounting. So I signed up for this Easy A class, senior year of high school. And it was interesting. I really enjoyed it. To me, it all just made sense. The debits and the credits and getting everything to balance. It all just, made sense to me. The language of business, being accounting, all of that came together. It was interesting. I think 2/3 of my people that talked me into going into the class, they dropped it halfway through the year. So, but I enjoyed it. The professor, the teacher was really good. He talked about, cash flow and how he bought his, little airplane and stuff by saving his money. And so I just really enjoyed accounting. And that's what started my path down the accounting route.
Okay, that's great. I can tell you when I was getting my degree and they recommended that I take cost accounting, that was one class that nearly derailed me from graduating. So more power to you. Can Can you tell us a little bit more about your own career path and what has helped you to become so successful in your career?
Yeah, I actually started after I graduated from Brigham Young University in Los Angeles with a firm called Deloitte and Touche. At the time, used to be Deloitte Touche Tomatsu, because I worked in the Japanese practice. I'd served a mission in Japan, and actually got a minor in Japanese from Brigham Young. And so I joined the practice. I was the only non-Asian in the group,
Hmm.
but it was a great experience. And so I started there. My wife's from Colorado, so after a few years, eventually I ended up in Colorado, changed to PwC or Price Waterhouse Coopers, and joined their technology practice. When I first joined the technology practice, things were going gangbusters, right? This was in the late, um, 1998, 1999, early 2000s. Things were going great. And then you had the dot-com bust. Some of us will probably remember that, but the technology practice went downhill quite a bit. And so I had to broaden my experience, and I started doing some manufacturing companies, some oil and gas companies, et cetera. I did a ski resort. And so kind of broadened that career path out to become partner at
Hmm.
PwC.
Well, you have a lot of experience. So, Mike, can you tell us what's the best career advice that someone's offered you?
Yeah, I think there's really two things, but one is that when you're working with somebody, whether it be a client or a staff or a senior, whoever it is, just try to make their lives a little bit easier. Sometimes we get so focused on ourselves and trying to get something done that we don't think about the people we're working with. So just think about, how do I make their lives a little easier? One example is you're doing a spreadsheet, right? You throw the spreadsheet together and you lob it across, you email it across and say, good luck, right? But do you take that little extra time to look at that spreadsheet and say, hey, does this make sense? If I'm looking at it cold, can somebody follow it here? Do I need to put a few more references into it? Do I need to make some notes to make it a little more clarification? Do I even ask them the question of what would make your life a little bit easier? And I think that was probably the first advice that I've tried to follow, is just try to make the people's life I work with just a little bit easier.
Hmm.
And the second one is the 80/20 rule. And some of us think about the 80/20 rule of, that the other one, but I heard about it from, 80% of what you do and the people you work with are really good. 20%, there's some things that you maybe want to change about them. So what do you focus on? Do you focus on that 20% that you don't like? Or do you focus on the 80% that you do like?
Hmm.
Right? And sometimes, there's some things of that 20% that you can change, but then sometimes there's not. And you see some people that just spiral downhill, focusing on that 20% and complaining about everything. And so I've tried to be positive and focus on that 80% that I do like.
That's great advice. Mike, can you tell us more about the work that you did in accounting?
Yeah, so the first part I did was accounting for income tax, right? So as part of the financial statements, one of the biggest line items there was the tax expense line. And so I tried to, come up, or that either I was the one that was coming up with the number, helping the clients do that, or I was auditing that number, right? And saying, hey, is that correct? So that was the first part I did, was the accounting. And then the second one was more tax related. So how can I save the company some either cash tax or rate tax, um, on a various different companies, right? Manufacturing companies, oil and gas companies, et cetera.
So was your career on a continual upward path, or were there times that you had to overcome significant obstacles?
Yeah, I would say that there's really two times that I had some obstacles I needed to overcome. The first one was when I worked with the Japanese group in LA. I really enjoyed the group, but obviously, being one of the non-Asians in the group, there was not only a glass ceiling that I hit, there was a cement ceiling, right? And trying to get through that was an obstacle, right? That was part of the reason why I changed and moved to Colorado, was hitting that cement ceiling in that group. So that was one. The second one, talked a little bit about it, but with the technology practice in the early 2000s going downhill with the dot-com bust, having to go through and reinvent myself, right? Going from somebody that focused on technology to broadening my skill set out was a big change, right? And I had a group of clients that was, a big group, a chance to make partner, and really had to reinvent myself to make partner a few years later.
Mhm. So you have your bachelor's degree and your master's degree, and you're a CPA. So can you discuss a little bit about the education requirements of becoming who you are right now?
Yeah, so really, I mean, in Colorado, each state's a little different, right? I got my CPA in California. California at the time had a 150-hour rule, so you had to have 150 hours of schooling, which the master's really helped with that. Sometimes you can get it without a master's,
Mhm.
but the master's really helped with that. So that was the first part. The second part is I actually had to get 500 audit hours. And so, being a tax person, I did some audit hours associated with the accounting for income tax, but I also had to work with some auditors, and I actually got the opportunity to be an audit senior for one job. Different experience. I mean, we could talk about that for 10 minutes, but I just had to have that broad range of experience in California to get my CPA.
I see. So are you finding that more schools are offering the master's program in conjunction with the bachelor's program where you can just go from one right into the next?
Yeah, really seeing that quite a bit.
Okay. Um, so in addition to your formal education, are there any other certifications or advanced learning that you found to be helpful in becoming successful in accounting?
Yeah, so with the tax law is always changing, right? Every time there's a new tax law, you got to get up to speed on it. And
Mhm.
so the firms really do a good job of providing webcasts or online things you can read, etc. And so I'd say that was my number one go-to thing is listen. I listened to a lot of webcasts. So every time a new tax law change came out, I usually tried to listen to two or three different webcasts to get different opinions, different viewpoints on that. And so that was probably the number one thing is listening to just a bunch of webcasts.
Hmm. Mike, uh, every every profession has its ups and downs. Could you tell us about what are some of the most important rewards and challenges of being a tax accountant?
So the one thing that I really enjoyed about being a tax accountant is like we just talked about, I got to learn about something new on a daily basis. As a partner, the staff ask the seniors questions and then the senior asks the manager questions, etc. So by the time those questions came to me, they were pretty complicated questions, right? So I really enjoyed being able to learn on a daily basis and get those tough questions. And if I couldn't answer it, if I didn't have the experience to answer it, we would go to somebody in the national office to answer those questions, right? So I really enjoyed that. Um, the downside is because of that, right? There's a lot of hours slash pressure associated with that.
Mhm.
You don't have, you don't have that learning if you don't have a little bit of pressure, if you don't have a few failures along the way, et cetera. All that helps you learn. And so that's a double-edged sword, right? Is that opportunity to learn and grow is also a bit of a challenge.
So it's interesting that we're doing this interview on October 15th. This would normally be a big day for you, right? It's tax filing deadline.
Yes, but now that I'm retired, it's a great day to do it.
Uh, Mike, you've been around a lot of senior people in the industry and very successful people. What do you consider to be the characteristics of the most successful leaders in the accounting industry?
Yeah, I would say that it's just being willing to listen and ask great questions, right? Nobody knows everything. And so somebody that's willing to listen and figure out, okay, what is the questions? Because that's what I saw the biggest mistake in public accounting isn't that they didn't know the technical answer. So they didn't understand the underlying facts. And
Mhm.
so being able to ask those questions and come up with the facts, I think that's number one. And then to be successful, number two is you have to be able to sell. In public accounting, to be a partner, you've got to be able to drum up business. And so
Mhm.
we can talk about that more, but I think that's something you got to figure out. How am I going to drum up business?
Sure, sure. Every profession you have to sell.
Exactly.
Sell your
Exactly.
services, sell your products, right?
Yeah, and some people think, oh, I'm going to go into accounting so I don't have to talk to people. Well, the reality is if you want to be successful, you've got to figure out how to
There
sell.
you go. So, for those that are exploring a career in the accounting industry, what are the trends that are impacting the industry now?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I saw when I was retiring is it's getting harder and harder to get that experience to train, right? And so what I mean by that is, we used to have that 8 column note paper, that we'd write everything down on, et cetera. Then we went to Excel, and now we're going to AI generated returns, et cetera, right? So the time that a staff is able to spend on a tax return and learn through that process is going down, which means the number of staff are going down as well. And so I think that's the one that I see is what's the long term for the tax profession is you used to have a pyramid type thing where you'd bring in 3 staff and that would turn into 2 seniors, turn into 1 manager, turn into a partner, right? And so having that ability to learn and go through that process is shrinking because now all of a sudden to prepare a tax return you need 1 staff, and so if that 1 staff leaves, now you got a half a senior. And so I
Hmm.
think that's the one thing is just that technology is kind of taking those opportunities to learn as you went through that process away.
So, what information or what advice would you give someone that's interested in exploring a career in the accounting industry, and then also someone that has that background, they've done their formal education, now they're interested in jumpstarting that career.
Yeah. I think, number one thing I would do, and just a little plug for this group, right, is to get a mentor, right? To talk to somebody that's been there and done that. So if you're looking to be an auditor or you're looking to be a tax professional, reach out, get a mentor in that field, right? There's so many people that are willing to talk to you and you can bounce things off of. I think that'd be my number one thing. And then
Hmm.
number two is just kind of look and say, okay, what am I really interested in? A mentor can help you define that, but also, look on the internet, listen to some of the tax webcasts, try out some of the technology stuff, et cetera.
So you're getting ready to graduate, you've got your accounting degree. How do you recommend pursuing a career in that field?
So the number one thing you can do is to get that internship because the way the bigger firms work is you have actually step one is to get the mini internship. Everybody calls it a little different, but you get a mini internship. And then the next year you get a full internship. So the mini internship, some firms call them a leadership conference, whatever it is, it's usually a 2 or 3 day thing. And then that leads you to get the internship the next year, which is a summer or, if you do it during busy season, et cetera. So get that internship and then you can move. If you're doing a good job at the internships, you can leverage that to get a full-time offer. So that's really the way it works at a lot of the firms. And so make sure you're spending the time to get the internships. And you can get the internships by, talking to people at Meet the Firms nights, make sure you get on the interview calendar at your local campus, et cetera.
Hmm. So you mentioned mentors, how important they are in establishing or jumpstarting a career, and also internships. Are there other resources that you would recommend a young adult uh, uh, to use to explore or research a career as an accountant?
Yeah, it's like I said, I think some of the webcasts that the firm put on are really good. And so I'd look at that. If you're interested in an auditor or like I said, a tax person, you can look at the PwC, Deloitte, EY, KPMG, all of them have really good things that you can look at and kind of look at their website. I think that would be a great starting point.
So those are available to the public then.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. So, Mike, I've got some friends that are tax accountants, and I'll tell you, tax accounting can be somewhat notorious for requiring long hours during peak tax preparation periods. So, certainly that impacts their skiing, right? Snow skiing.
Mhm. Yeah, for
But
sure.
what advice can you offer young adults that are interested in being successful as an accountant, but also want to have balance in their life.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I really enjoyed public accounting because I get to learn something new on a daily basis, right? But I did work hard. There was no doubt about it. I worked less the last half of my career than I did my first half of my career, and part of that was because public accounting kind of realized that, hey, we can't have people working over 3,000 hours a year and retain them, right? So they've kind of worked that work-life balance. But I think you also need to know where you draw the line yourself. Right. And so there was things that I would do to kind of make sure that my wife knew what was going on. And so one of the things that I would do every week is I would tell everybody I was working with, I'm going home early on Friday, and they all knew it, right? I've been doing it for years, and so they all knew that, okay, Mike's leaving, you know, I'm going to leave before traffic hits. So, you know, by 3 o'clock on a Friday, I'd be gone. I'd go home, spend a couple hours with my kids, and then my wife and I would go out on a date night every single Friday.
Nice.
And that really helped because all the questions that she had, instead of trying to say, Mike, I need to talk to you, you know, she'd be able to save them up and we'd have a great conversation on Friday night. Right. So figure out what is that, you know, where are those lines that I want to draw and make sure that you draw those lines so you have that time. Rather, if you just accept everything that comes your way, you'd work, you know, 60, 70, 80 hours a week all the time. So draw your
Sure.
lines, make sure that you're spending the time, you know, and work hard, play hard.
So, Mike, I've found that young people especially want their career to have a meaningful and positive impact on society.
Mhm.
So what advice can you offer young adults in accomplishing this?
Yeah, so I'd say figure out what type of clients you want to work on and make sure that the people you work with know that, right? So I had some staff that wanted to work on oil and gas because it was kind of a cool technology, and some of them that didn't, right? And they wanted to work on the clean fuel aircraft company that I had, right? And so they thought that was cool, or the solar companies, et cetera.
Mhm.
So figure out, you know, what kind of clients do you want to work at, and you can make a difference in that, right? Starting with a smaller company and helping them grow and develop can help them be successful, right? And so just figure out what is that niche that you want to do and make sure that you let people know. And I think you can make a difference in that regard.
That's great advice. Mike, you mentioned sales. You said, especially as you rise in the company, that sales becomes more and more important. So, can you talk about networking, how you would do that uh, in marketing and sales, and then just how you suggest young people do that at the beginning of their careers through their career?
Yeah. And I think the number one thing is just do it the way you're comfortable, right? Don't try to go outside of your comfort zone. But what I found is that a lot of people, you know, really go into accounting because they don't want to talk to people is kind of their initial reaction, right? So figure out, oh, well, how can I talk to people in a normal and natural way? And so the easiest way to do that is just the people you're working with. So
Mhm.
develop those relationships with the clients you're working with, the staff you're working with, the managers you're working with, etc. Because what'll happen is, you know, if you go out in a staff and you're working with the staff of the client, before you know it, you've been promoted a few times, the staff has been promoted a few times, and all of a sudden you've got a great relationship. So I would keep however you want to do it, you know, Excel or your client relationship database, however you want to do it, but keep that list of the people you're working with and keep those relationships fresh because, you know, it's easy to make a relationship with the other staff in the company. It's a little harder as a brand new staff to develop the relationship with the CFO.
Mhm.
You can develop that relationship with the other staff and then just keep those up as you grow up in the organization. It's so much easier to call somebody that you know that you've worked with before that they respect rather than making that cold call. Those cold calls I found were usually not very successful. But if I called
Sure.
somebody that, hey, I'd worked with Mike before, I know Mike's going to do a great job for me, it was so much easier to win that work.
Yeah, we often recommend with our young adults as they're meeting with mentors that they keep those mentors. It's not just one interview and they're done with them. They want to keep them as part of their network, and that helps them throughout their life.
Mhm.
So, Mike, in addition to your very successful professional career, you've led a fascinating and engaging life. We've talked about your travels all over the world. Is there any life advice that you'd like to offer to young adults?
Yeah, the number one thing that, especially right when I was retiring, my brother gave me some advice. He says, when it's your time, it's your time. And there's some people that are so scared about doing something, whether that be traveling, right, or climbing or whatever it is, that they end up not wanting to do anything and they sit on their couch all day, or they sit and they play video games all day or whatever, right? If it's your time, whether you're sitting on the couch or whether you're sitting in India, it's going to happen. And so just take advantage, right? Take advantage of your life and what you want to do. And if you get the opportunity to go do something, if you to travel to India, or, I like to climb with my son. He's twice as good as I am, or maybe 10 times as good as I am, but just take advantage of it, right? Be safe about it, right? When I climb with my son, he makes sure I've got my 3 points and, so I'm not doing anything too crazy. So be safe, be smart about it, but don't let your concern about something happening not let you do anything. So I'd
Mhm.
say that's my number one piece of advice.
So sometimes you'll hear about people say, when I retire, then I have all of these things that I'm going to do. But is that the way that you led your life, or did you do a lot of fun things during your career?
I tried to do a lot of fun things during my career, right? And so, like, I went, growing up, I didn't travel much, but my wife did. And so she always had the bug and she gave me the bug. And so I had the opportunity to take a sabbatical when I was working, and we went to Jordan, Israel, and Egypt. And it was
Nice.
just a great trip, right? And we took it during there. I could have, stuck around home or whatever, but it's just like, hey, take advantage of those opportunities, right? Take your vacation, right? Take your weekends and do stuff that you're interested in.
That's great. So, Mike, to conclude our interview, is there any other career advice that you have for young adults?
It's interesting. I would just say, hey, take things and do things that you're interested in. Like we've talked about some of these, right? Get your mentor, do things that you're really interested in. And if you don't like what you're doing, look and say, okay, what can I do to change, right? How do I get something that I'm interested in doing so I can, to do a real, like my job, right? I worked a ton of hours, but I didn't mind it because I enjoyed what I'm doing.
Mhm.
So if you enjoy what you're doing, you're able to be successful and work hard at it.
I like that. Thank you. Mike, we appreciate the time that you've taken today to offer career building advice to young adults that are interested in a career in accounting. So to wrap up this video, we'd like to remind our viewers that they can either reach out on their own to seasoned professionals like Mike to schedule an informational interview, or they can ask for an introduction to a professional from perhaps someone that you know. To prepare for an informational interview, we recommend that you watch the video on this website uh, titled Conducting Informational Interviews. So thanks again, Mike. We really appreciate you taking the time out with us today.
You're welcome.